I remember meeting a designer from HS2 on the train and having the most interesting and elaborate conversation with him about the various intricate innovations that were being made to HS2, and particularly about the way the rail lines were going to bond and so on. And now there's a story about this bat protected shelter, or this shelter which protects bats. And for a 1 kilometre curved barrier that covers the tracks alongside Sheep House Wood in Buckinghamshire to prevent bats being disturbed by high-speed trains. It's called a shed, and it's already cost apparently more than £100 million to protect the bats in this wood, and it's apparently not necessary. The bat people didn't want it. This is something which has been imposed on HS2 by the HS2 squad of designers. And, it's as if they can find the most expensive solution to a problem, then that's what they're going to do because it's innovative and interesting. And they've used hundreds of thousands of pounds on lawyers and environmental specialists because the local councils didn't approve of this scheme or that scheme. And in the end, it's about the fact that the last Conservative government stripped the local councils of their power and of their funding. Why would they possibly approve a scheme that cuts through their land when a lot of the local residents had their homes, their farms, their buildings forcibly stolen from them by this mad government scheme that doesn't quite get into London, that doesn't quite get into Birmingham, that doesn't quite go anywhere, and does it at enormous expense and a little bit more speed. And does it surprise you at all the Buckinghamshire Council, on whose land this particular shed was going to be built, opposes HS2 and has previously criticised the project for unnecessarily damaging Sheep House Wood? This is revenge. And it's a mixture of revenge and incompetence and showing off and stupidity. And so whilst the council, the deputy cabinet member for the HS2, Peter Martin, says whilst the council wishes to protect species such as Bechstein's bats, one of the country's rarest species, it was never supportive of what seemed like an extremely excessive cost for a single structure. HS2 Limited has always been adamant that the bat tunnel structure, which has been designed and built by HS2 Limited's own contractor, and the associated costs were necessary, but it's not something we insisted on. Well, that's gobbledygook to start with, isn't it? The whole thing is an example of deceit and ego. And, interfacing, having to deal with my local councils in the last few days, I realise it runs through the entire system. I find it extraordinary that at one point I was thinking of becoming a councillor or an MP, because I wouldn't want to be associated with this tribe of liars. And I find it extraordinary. These people aren't in it for the people who have elected them. They're in it for themselves. They're in it to make their mark. They go over budget because they want to be grand. And it doesn't matter whether they say, development and nature go hand in hand. HS2 limit is required by legislation not to harm the environment. But it has harmed the environment. It's harmed farms. It's harmed people's livelihood and people's homes. It's already done that. So to say it's not going to harm the environment is rubbish. It's simply words. And when you compare HS2, this monolithic white elephant, with the high-speed trains casually being built across Spain and other parts of Europe, we have to ask ourselves, what has gone wrong with Britain that we seem incapable of doing a proper job? We seem incapable of being honest. Only the other day I was talking about the BBC stealing somebody else's story and passing it off as their own. They wrote to me today that they're still considering my complaint. Why? It's fairly straightforward. You stole the story. You didn't attribute or acknowledge the person that you stole it from. It's straightforward, isn't it? But it seems that once we've got all these complaints processes and we can play all these games, we do endlessly. Like, it's not like a game of chess, it's like a game of musical chairs. Chess is a game for a certain amount of intelligence. Musical chairs is a game we play in primary school. When the music stops, you find yourself on a different chair and somebody is left out. That somebody is the electorate, isn't it? And all these people are sitting on their own, indulging themselves and blaming whoever they can for anything that emerges. I'm tired, in a way, of drawing comparisons with ancient Rome, and particularly the Roman Republic. But the comparisons scream out about deceit and indulgence and posturing. And in fact, I'm more inclined than ever to make a series of videos about ancient Rome, and I shall either do those and post them on a Patreon page, or I will post them on the other YouTube channel that I've got. So there's a clearer distinction between all this political carping and serious video work. And so I'm trying to set up a Patreon at the moment, and I'm trying also to get through the nonsense, the bureaucratic nonsense of trying to sell merchandise. I've got a series of mugs which it should be possible shortly to buy. I hope by the middle of next week they will be available.